the other states that are being so hard hit can do well by them. We know we're in this together, and I want you to know that your efforts as Washingtonians of staying home and social distancing are being noted around the country, and it's a reason to be proud of our state. We know this process is slow, it is methodical, and I'm glad we are committed to it, lock, stock, and barrel. But we need to understand this: we are not out of the woods yet. We simply have to continue staying home, have to continue social distancing, because all of the progress we've made to date could be wiped out if we retreat from this effort, now or in the future. By the way, I just saw on one of the television stations carrying this news conference a picture of a grocery store. And they were telling a really good story, which the grocer had limited the number of people coming into the store to increase social distancing. And we really appreciate grocers and other businesses who are doing that. But one thing I noted is that a really goodly number of people in that store were my age and older. And we need those folks to really stay home right now. And for those people, you know, over the age of 65, or if you have some compromised health condition, we really want you to stay home. Ask a friend, ask a neighbor to do shopping for you for the upcoming weeks. We really care about you. We want you to see your way through this. And if we keep this group of people in our arms and embrace them and do grocery shopping for them, we're going to have a lot of grandmothers and grandfathers who will be with us in the years to come. And so I hope people will take that to heart. So now I want to turn to our economic efforts to help us rebuild our economy and weather this storm. We're planning a long term for how we're going to come out of this, both as a public health crisis and as an economic challenge. And obviously we need to do that because hundreds of thousands of Washingtonians are applying for unemployment insurance as we speak. They're worried about how to make rent, their house payments. They're wondering if their businesses are going to survive. This is a tough time for a lot of our fellow Washingtonians. So for the moment this crisis began, we've been working diligently with state and federal lawmakers to try to rebuild our economy. Over the last month, the state has hired hundreds of additional workers to process the industrial insurance claims that we know are already coming. We have waived the 1-week waiting period so we can get cash to people who are unemployed as fast as humanly possible. We've expanded the state family emergency assistance program to provide more cash assistance to families in need. So our list of resources has continued to grow, and we're convening work groups with industries and like construction and others to see what we can do to help the economy. And today I'm pleased to announce additional steps we're taking. But I'll be blunt about this. What we're going to talk about today is only just a start of what we need to do. We know we have a long economic recovery ahead of us. We're going to have to be intense in our efforts. We're going to roll out every tool at our disposal while we're expecting federal assistance as well. So we're making some steps today that you might think of some short-term steps with many larger and more aggressive steps to follow. But we want to do today what we can do to help Washingtonians across these troubled waters. First, we know we have thousands of people who have put their lives into small businesses, and we want to help them through this period. Therefore, we're opening the application process for an emergency $5 million grant program to help small businesses who've been impacted by COVID-19 and the Stay Home, Stay Healthy order. These Working Washington Small Business grants are provided through the Governor's Strategic Reserve Fund, and they're administered by the State Department of Commerce. The grants will provide up to $10,000 for small businesses that have under 10 employees. And businesses can use this money to pay rent, utility bills, supplies, inventory, and other operating expenses. To apply for this grant, if you're interested, you can go to coronavirus.wa.gov. That's coronavirus.wa.gov. .gov, and we hope people can avail themselves of this. We have targeted small businesses as the people who have most difficulty weathering financial storms, and we look forward to these small businesses continuing. Second, we want to make sure that everyone has access to economic assistance. So I'm announcing the Department of Commerce is providing a business resiliency assistance program that is partnering with a variety of organizations to help out. We want to make sure everyone has access to the benefits that could be available. So the state is partnering with the Tri-Cities Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Tacoma Urban League, Spokane's Inland Northwest Business Alliance, and Seattle Chinatown International District Preservation and Development Authority. Partners are doing a variety of things, including some translation services to get access to assistance. And we're particularly glad about this because we saw a lot of Asian American restaurants hit hard because people mistakenly thought that ethnicity played some role in this. Was just simply wrong. So I'm glad we're helping these businesses, particularly restaurants, if there's a way to keep going. Third, we want to help our businesses access federal assistance. So if you're a small business, a nonprofit, an independent contractor, or a self-employed individual in need of financial help, you might be eligible for a forgivable loan from the U.S. Small Business Administration. And our office has worked with our federal congressional delegation and others to partner to enable this program in Washington State by requesting an SBA disaster declaration in early March. That opened the door to these benefits. Beginning last Friday, local banks began taking these SBA applications, issuing forgivable loans. Now, these are obviously in high demand, and it's caused some frustration nationally in how the federal government is being administered. But we need Washington businesses to keep applying so that our states isn't leaving federal relief dollars on the table. So there is frustration, but we got to keep those applications coming in. For more information, you can go to www.sba.gov, www.s.ba.gov. And we hope these initiatives together can help soften the economic blow of this virus. But I want to stress this. We know what we're doing today is not enough. This is a huge challenge to us all, and there is much more we are going to need to do. I'm also encouraging other individuals with legal issues to check out the Office of Civil Legal Aid. That program can help unemployment compensation, eviction and foreclosure, and as you know, we've put a moratorium on evictions for non-payment of rent, family safety and domestic violence, debt collection, consumer protection, and a variety of other issues. And you can find help there at ocla.wa.gov, ocla.wa.gov, or at washingtonlawhelp.org, washingtonlawhelp.org. Additionally, my office and leading nonprofits in the state today launched a fund to support the state food banks as supply levels have dropped. We expect about 1.6 million Washingtonians to approach food banks for assistance this week alone. And that's double the number that have sought help from food banks in any given week. So I hope you might give consideration to helping to that at the Washington Food Fund. And you can find that at www.wafoodfund.org. That's www.wafoodfund.org. This is going to be one of the most efficient ways to get resources to these food banks. I also obviously want to offer the possibilities of helping our restaurants survive. We can all buy gift certificates that could be used a little later after we reopen. We want to keep these small businesses going. Just to give you some ideas, some of the other work we've done, we have now dispersed $120 million out of the $200 million emergency fund allocated by the legislature. And of that, we've had $10 million go to our Department of Agriculture to purchase food and distribute food to other nonprofits. We've had $5 million in our Department of Commerce to assist 29 of our federally recognized tribes, and $30 million to our Department of Health to cover state and local government costs associated with the outbreak. Those efforts are going to continue. Lastly, I'd like to reiterate something we really need to do right now, and that is to respond to the U.S. Census. You know, we got a long recovery ahead of us, and the more Washingtonians that answer the census forms, the more funds we will have available in the state of Washington to help on all of these services that we need across the board. So that's one patriotic thing everybody can do, is to answer that census fund. That's going to help our state long-term, big time. Now I'd like to introduce, we have some folks to answer questions or may speak. Department of Commerce Director Lisa Brown, Clallam Economic Development Council Director Colleen McAleer, and Executive Director of the State Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs, Toshiko Hasegawa. I might ask on Colleen, would you like to make some comments?
Yes, thank you very much, Governor Inslee. On the Olympic Peninsula, small businesses are the lifeblood of our communities. They create the true feel of what a hometown means and are essential for our local economies. We know this grant is only going to help a very limited number of businesses, but it's one element of a larger response. And the process will allow our advising teams to connect with businesses who need help right now and provide them with resources we have available now. We're pulling out all the stuff out chambers so that this economic crisis will end as a superficial wound rather than a fatal blow, affecting all of us for years to come. Our larger vendors and landlords in Clallam County, with the ability to defer or even skip a payment, are doing exactly that. Over the last couple weeks, I've really been inspired by the leadership that many people have shown for those who are most at risk. But this isn't just generosity. Since small businesses make up nearly half of our regional GDP, keeping these businesses afloat is just solid, good business. For now, many businesses are pivoting. Our community banks are accepting SBA loan applications. Our Composite Recycling Technology Center has started making face shields for healthcare workers. Restaurants are serving lunches to the children of first responders. I've taken so many phone calls from business owners in tears these last couple of weeks. But when I share programs like this one, they always tell me that I've brightened their day, and now they feel that there is a potential path for them to get through this. So thank you very much, Governor Inslee and Director Brown, for your steady leadership and for providing these funds to small business owners across our state. Toshiko now has a few remarks.
My name is Toshiko Hasegawa, and as Governor Inslee mentioned, I am the Executive Director of Washington State's Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs. And what CAPA does is it identifies and examines the issues impacting APA communities in Washington State. And we subsequently advise the governor and state agencies like Commerce on programs that would impact our communities. And since we've learned of compounding challenges facing our community members, including APA-owned businesses. And we know that COVID-related losses hit APA businesses earlier, even prior to the statewide closures, due to unfair racial stigmas and the prejudicial perceptions that Asian businesses might be unclean or unsanitary. And we know that business owners of all backgrounds who are limited English proficient have a hard time applying for support services and relief opportunities simply because so often these resources aren't made available in multiple languages. CAPA has received clear and pointed input from community on how important it is that the state make its resources available in a way that is culturally appropriate and idiomatically accessible. And that's why the state is providing targeted assistance to people who speak different languages. so that when they go online to access this grant page, they'll be able to receive information in multiple languages, including some commonly spoken Asian languages, at the same time as they could access it in English. And in this way, English language learning business owners can get a fair bite at the apple. Washington State is one of the most culturally and linguistically diverse states in America. And CAPA does commend the efforts to ensure that the much needed support services provided by the state is going to reach the businesses who need it the most.
Thank you. We have Director Lisa Brown. Lisa, did you want to make any comments or just stand for questions? Your call.
Questions.
Okay, and we also have Susie Levine, who's leading our Employment Security Department Herculean efforts to get unemployment compensation to people as quickly as humanly possible. And I believe she'll stand for any questions. So with that, how about questions?
First, we'll go to Rachel with AP.
Governor, has there been any decision yet on whether to expand construction projects allowed during the closures over the next month? And then a question for Commissioner Levine, looking ahead to Thursday's update on unemployment. Have you gotten a sense that we'll see a more significant spike than we saw last week?
Susie, why don't you go ahead and answer that question first?
Rachel, could you say that again? I could barely hear you on that.
I just was wondering, looking ahead to Thursday's update on unemployment claims, wondering if you have seen early numbers that give you a sense on whether we're going to see a more significant spike than we saw last week.
Thank you so much for asking that, Rachel. As you know, we'll report this Thursday last week's numbers versus this week's numbers. We're sort of generally a week delayed on that. I can tell you in terms of our call volumes that our call volumes last week were down about 10 to 15%. So that is encouraging, but that is also because of the mitigation efforts that we've put in place to equip people with better information. I think the spike that you'll really see in unemployment insurance numbers, the next big spike will happen the week ending April 25th because of our launch of the new Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program that is slated to go live on the 18th. So I suspect that that will be when we see the next big spike, but right now it's sort of leveling out.
Susie, could you just briefly describe some of your efforts to be ready for that to the extent humanly possible?
Absolutely. I think it's actually going to be in all of state government and all of state effort to be ready for what could be quite an influx of demand for employment. Clarify, it's that those who are not currently eligible for unemployment insurance and who are impacted by COVID-19 will be eligible for this new pandemic unemployment assistance, plus anybody on unemployment insurance or this new pandemic unemployment assistance get an additional $600 per week added to their weekly benefit and are available to get an additional 13 weeks. We will launch that, and we are doing a tremendous amount of education, videos, webinars, outreach to the communities, outreach to people who are already on unemployment insurance. Basically, the message is the more prepared you are and use our checklists and understand what you need when you apply, the faster you'll get your money. Right now, our processing times are basically 5 to 7 days once somebody's claim is approved. And therefore, we want to make sure that more people come into the system approved and ready before they call our phone lines. And there's a lot that people can find on our website at esd.wa.gov. So we're going to be hiring up more staff. We already have been. And we are on a pace now of hiring about 100 people every 2 weeks, bringing in other state agencies to help us, and working also now with different organizations to train their trainers to reach out to their employees before they go on standby or get furloughed so that we can help them smoothly go through the process.
Yeah, and I was just being briefed today by Susie on this. One of the things you're going to see in the upcoming weeks is the ability to have a separate line to get questions answered. so that we could free up other resources for people who actually wanted to make an application. We think that's going to minimize the waiting time that people have to get question answers. And there's quite a number of other things through technology the department is using to expedite this. This is a huge mountain to climb, and I'm glad we're climbing it as fast as humanly possible. The issue of construction, this is an extremely important industry in our state for so many different reasons, and the industry is going to come back, roaring back, as soon as we can in a safe way that does not jeopardize the progress we've made. And the thing about construction workers is we care about them because frequently they have to work in close proximity to people while they're doing construction work. I have a little familiarity with that, having driven concrete trucks and run jackhammers and painted and dump trucks, and my son's in the construction industry. So we care about those workers, but we also care about not allowing them to become infected and transmit their parents and their grandparents. So there's a lot of reasons to care about this industry. So we will make the right decision at the right time where we are able to expand the industry. There may be opportunities to do it in sort of steps where later in the game, as we see more progress and bend this curve down further, there may, and I emphasize may, be the ability to allow the industry to come back with certain more restrictions. It's something we're thinking about. We have not made any decisions today in that regard.
Hi, Governor. A couple of questions for you. First, is the state Medicaid system prepared for what I imagine will be an unprecedented spike in applicants, and do we have enough from the federal government to sustain it? In addition, I know you're working very hard when it comes to a moratorium on evictions. Is there anything that prevents people renting from having to pay late penalties on a month? And then specifically, you mentioned that there's
Yeah, the issue about late payments we're looking at, I don't believe our order covers that. It is something we are going to be thinking about in the days to come. On the Medicaid side, the one thing I want to say is I'm really glad that our state has been so successful getting coverage for over 800,000 people now under health care reform. I say that because people have forgotten we need health care for everybody right now. And I'm glad we have stopped some of the efforts in Congress to repeal health care that would remove health care from 800,000 people. If anything comes out of this COVID crisis, we hope that it is people giving up trying to take away health care from 800,000 people in the state of Washington. That will be something good coming out of this darkness. In answer to your question, look, all of these challenges we have with increased numbers, we will have to add resources to process applications and develop new technologies to deal with avalanches of claims. We are doing that, but I think Washingtonians may have to have a little more patience to get these claims processed just by the tsunami we're getting hit with. But I can assure you we're doing everything humanly possible to build capacity. Let me give you an example. We have freed up 540 state employees who are in different agencies to hopefully be able to move into the Employment Security Department and fill the need for massive new processing capability. Now, not all of those people are going to be able to do all of that work, but some of them will. So we're going to do everything we can to do this as quickly as possible. And I want to thank Washingtonians if they need a dose of patience as we go through this.
Governor, if I heard you correctly, I think you said the state has spent $120 million of the $200 million appropriated by the legislature for the coronavirus response. Do you anticipate having to call lawmakers back to budget more money for this?
I'm trying to decide between possibly and probably. I guess I would probably say probably, given the extent of the economic damage that we have suffered. We have not made a decision on that. And as I've indicated, it is my belief that we are going to have to do some more aggressive things. The question is when to do those things. If it's before January, then we would call a special session. So stay tuned. The legislature is perfectly willing to get back to work. as we assess these economic things. Now, what we've done today, I want to stress, these are relatively small things given the mountain we've got to climb, but they are things we can do quickly, and that's what we're focusing on right today. We are starting to turn our attention to the larger, more long-term issues of rebuilding demand in this state. And if you heard me talking yesterday, I firmly believe that the nation and our state are going to need very, very large increased demand to build our economy again, to build our infrastructure in many, many ways. We can't just rely on what you think of as transfer payments. Unemployment compensation, its expansion, crucial at this moment. I'm glad we're doing it. Small business loans to help these companies survive, crucial at this moment. I'm glad we're doing it. But we do need, in the not too distant future, a plan to build this state, to create demand for these companies to get out there and start rebuilding our state and our nation. And that would require a special session.
Next question comes from Essex with Cairo.
Yes, Governor, you mentioned $5 million for small business grants, but that sounds like such a small number considering the need. Is there any thought to expanding the amount of money that would be available for such grants? And for Director Brown, if a business applies for one of those grants, how long is it going to take for them to get the money?
Lisa, do you want to answer that?
Yes, Essex. The money should be able to be turned around really quickly. The partners that we're working with across the state are the chambers of commerce, the economic development entities that each county has. So there is already a familiarity with the businesses in their communities. So the funds will be, we already have set up the contracts with those ADO organizations and hope to move through that process very quickly for these, as you said, relatively small grants, but $10,000 for a small business can help them with fixed costs, utilities, the kinds of things that they can't turn off right now. And we hope that in some ways this is a bridge. Those same companies may be eligible for the Small Business Administration loans offered by the federal government, but those processes are still being developed, and the smallest businesses with 10 or fewer employees are the ones that have the fewest resources to fall back on. So this will be available all across the state, and the application process begins today at the coronavirus.wa.gov website.
Yeah, I just want to agree with Essex that these are small numbers, but to a small business, a mom and pop restaurant that can keep in business when they get this benefit, it won't be small to them. It could be life-changing. So I'm glad we're able to do this, but we are going to require much larger infusions and investment in our state to really get our economy going. We certainly recognize that.
Next question comes from Mai with the Yakima Herald.
Hello, Governor. Thanks for answering my question. I actually was going to ask about construction, but that was already asked, so I'm going to ask a different question. I'm wondering, as you mentioned earlier, you were able to return 400 ventilators to the stockpile, and in that stockpile was included 20 ventilators that came to Yakima and then we gave back. So I just wanted to see if you could comment about possibly more ventilators coming to Central Washington.
Yes, well, we did a very extensive analysis of this and became very confident that we will have adequate ventilators across the state of Washington, including Central Washington, including Yakima, to suit our needs. Now, that's in part because we have another 950 ventilators, which we are purchasing ourselves, that are coming in the next days and weeks. So when we originally ordered those 400 from the federal government, our modeling showed that we would have a much more rapid increase in the number of people that were in critical care that needed ventilators. Fortunately, because what people are doing in Washington, we have been able to reduce the number of the people who will need that, particularly early in this event. And so it turns out that the need was not there. So we did what Washingtonians always do. We acted responsibly to help everyone, and those are going to go to places where they have critical shortages today in their ICUs, and there's a number of them, obviously, including New York and soon Louisiana. So I think we made the right decision. We were teamed up with Oregon and California in this regard, and I think we're in good shape on ventilators. But I do want to make this point, and forgive me if I've said this before. There is going to be a very human temptation in the next several weeks that if our fatality rate starts to go down, and we hope it does, that is not a certainty, but if it does, there's going to be a human inclinations to let up, to take it easy a little bit, thinking that we're on top of this. That could be a fatal mistake. So yes, we have returned ventilators, but we have not, we are not free of the threat of losing hundreds of other Washingtonians as we continue to improve. And the way I think of this is, you know, my dad was an old track coach, and he always taught runners, you got to run through the tape. You don't stop 5 yards before you hit the tape. You got to run through it. We got to wrestle this to the ground. We got to get it so low that it's not going to come back and bite us again. And to do that, all of us are going to have to really concentrate on the task before us. And fortunately, people are. We're continuing to see huge, massive commitment of Washingtonians to being safe and helping each other.
Good afternoon, Governor. There appears to be a building group in Idaho encouraging folks to ignore the orders. Sheriff has endorsed that move. There's talk of public Easter services. Any concerns for you along the eastern Washington border that some of those folks may, as they do, come into the state of Washington? And do you see any need to increase enforcement in that part of the state or anywhere with the Easter weekend coming up?
Well, to my knowledge, we have not seen that in the state of Washington, which is a good thing. Look, we know how important faith is in many, many lives in our state. We know that it provides comfort and hope and the benefits of faith. We understand that very deeply. But we also understand that it can be a fatal communion. And that's just too dangerous right now. So we have had enormous cooperation of our faith community in Washington State who have abided by this because they recognize the power of love, and the first power of love is not to infect your congregant. And we built into our order the ability for churches to have a number of people in their churches to run their social networking so you can have virtual services. And I think those are being quite successful. So we hope that will continue to be the case. So at the moment, we've just had, like I said, the vast majority of Washingtonians are trying to take care of their loved ones and the state, and we have not seen that problem in our state.
Thank you, Governor. A couple of numbers type questions. You mentioned the 300 beds that the state is returning. I'm wondering if you're confident that you can get those beds back if you need them, if at some point things do not continue on this progress. And on the $5 million worth of grants, are those going to be divided up across the state based on population, some other metric, or is it first come, first serve?
Lisa, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. We're putting in place a way to have some regional equity. So yes, people should apply right away because there will not be enough funds for all that would like those funds for every business. But we will be evaluating them according to each county's applications that they send in so that we can make sure we have a distribution across the whole state. So I'm here in Spokane right now. Greater Spokane Incorporated will be the partner organization that we work with here.
Does that answer? Jim, you had another question that escaped me. What is you had another question there.
About the 300 beds, are you confident that if you need those beds in the future, if things don't continue to go in the positive direction that we're seeing, can you get them back?
Yes, and I think you're finding governors who are sharing this responsibility. As I've indicated, Washington, California, Oregon all acted responsibly in this regard, and I think you're going to find a common sense of that across the country. We have had very open communications with FEMA, with the U.S. Army, with the Navy, with Vice President Pence, who I speak to probably every other day. So we have very good communications with our federal partners to try to talk about these prioritization issues. And we've been appreciative of the federal government who's helped us in any number of ways. So I feel confident about that. Look, if I did not feel confident of that, we would not have made these decisions to release some of these assets. Obviously, this is my home, this is my state, and this is where my heart and responsibility are. But I feel good about where we are right now in that regard. But as I have said now, we can only be confident if we maintain and to some degree increase our commitment to the social distancing. We can only be confident if our citizens over the age of 65 don't go to the grocery store when they don't have to. Ask somebody else to help them. Only if we have business leaders maintain social distancing if they are still open. Only if we can keep our young people from congregating in beaches and parks. All of those things need to continue if we're going to succeed on this. You may have seen some modeling done by the Institute for Health Metrics here in Seattle, and it had some good news for us that suggested our predicted fatalities is going down from what was earlier predicted rather significantly. That's really good news, but people need to understand in that model, it is modeled on the assumption that we will continue to keep our nose to the ground here and our shoulder to the wheel. If we let up, that number's going back up again on fatalities. So this is a moment of sustained effort to keep this all the way until the end of the game here.
We have time for 2 more questions. Next will be Hannah with Power Radio.
Hi, Governor. Congresswoman Jayapal and several of our congressional delegation have signed on to a letter to the federal government to ask for more testing supplies for here. I'm wondering if, based on the information that you have at this point, can you paint me a picture of where we are testing-wise in Washington State?
We are in a very, very unsatisfactory position. And this is one of my greatest frustrations, where the federal government has not acted with as much intensity of leadership that we need. We have hundreds of people that we would like to test today, including some in our long-term care facilities that have had people infected in their facility that cannot get tested. And the reason is that there simply are not enough test kits. A swab, a vial with what's called transport medium in it, where you take the sample and you put it in, it keeps the virus in a position to be sampled. Those kits are simply not available to us, and this is massively frustrating. We are searching the world to acquire them. I spoke this morning to a company that makes these swabs, and so as governor, I'm actually trying to procure them everywhere in the world right now, and I think we're going to succeed, by the way, to accelerate a procurement on that because of that conversation. So we are doing everything humanly possible, but there is a world shortage of these, and that is why I have been trying to urge the administration, with all the power I possess, to use their ability to order the production of these kits. The President of the United States does have legal authority under the Defense Production Act to order companies to manufacture swabs and vials and transport medium to get this job done so that we can distribute these kits to the people who need them in the state of Washington. And so far, by and large, the president has not been willing to exercise that authority. Our delegation has urged the president. I was on a call this morning with our congressional delegation, and they have been very vigorous in this regard. Adam Smith, who's obviously a leader in the armed services community in the House, has urged the administration to move in this direction, largely to no avail. Now, we're doing everything we can. We're contacting companies or looking for companies that might be able to manufacture these kits as well. But the federal government has much more ability to move the manufacturing base, and we wish that they would use that opportunity. Now, the kits are not the only issue. We also have to dramatically increase the ability to analyze these samples, meaning the analytic capacity of the whole system has to increase several fold. And this is something I don't believe yet the federal government has come to terms with of how much we have to increase testing capability, because we're going to have to increase it dramatically as we come through this epidemic to allow people to safely return to work. So I can't overstate the need for increased capacity, the need for federal help on this, and the need for us to be as vigorous as possible to obtain this equipment. Now, as a result, we've had to make triage decisions, where if you have two places where you need the kit, you've got to make a really hard decision about the way to save the most life. And we're making those decisions every day, and they're very, very difficult. So we're doing everything we can to improve that capacity, but we need a lot more federal help.
Final question comes from Keith with Keith, are you there?
Keith, are you with us? Are you muted?
Okay. Instead, we will go to Carolyn with KNKX.
Hello, Governor. When you're talking about the shortage of test kits, a week or so ago, time is so meaningless now. Sometime recently, you asked Washington state companies to come forward to volunteer their services. Have you been able to locate anyone in the state of Washington who's able to help us with test kit materials?
I don't believe so as of this moment, but I'm going to be having a conversation with leaders in the life sciences industries in our state in the near future in the hope that we can identify some additional assistance. And if anybody who's listening to this production has any ideas, please let us know. These are critical, and we need help throughout the supply chain to make this happen. So we'll be diligent. If you have an idea, send it to me. We're going to keep up this work. Final remarks, just want to thank everyone for what you're doing. Winning an effort like this is a collection of thousands of small acts. And I want to thank everyone for their small acts that are adding up. The people who are shopping for a grandparent, the people who are finding a way to help a student right now in these difficult times when they're not in school, helping with childcare, with hardworking parents that are telecommuting. All of these small acts are what actually wins a war. That's how you win wars. There are millions of small, heroic actions. I want to thank everybody for what you're doing in this regard, and we're going to get through this together. Wash your hands. Thank you.